Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Real Life, Real Love with myself, Sarah Michelle, and Hayley Henderson. I am a sex, love, and intimacy coach. And you know what? I went straight into who I am, and I didn't even share what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're going to be talking about how men respond and react versus how women respond and react in communication. Hayley and I were both talking about how as women, like, we love being in these relationships with polarity, the masculine and feminine energies. But one thing that we see women do is they want this polarity, but then they show up just naturally expecting their partner to behave and respond the way that they would themselves. But that's not really a fair thing to do to your partner, because if you're going to be the feminine, you need to be ready and available for him to respond in masculine instead of feminine. And as we get to talking about this later, I'll share a little bit from my own, my previous marriage, because I definitely made this mistake when I was married. Okay, so now I'll take a moment to introduce myself. I am a sex, love, and intimacy coach, and I help men and women, couples and single people, either call in the relationships that they're looking for and desire, or help them experience that in the relationship that they already have, so that they have better communication, deeper intimacy, more pleasurable sex life. Like, even just that stuff is fun to work on. Sometimes we're not working on such big problems. It's more just about how much more fun can we create in this relationship. We're a conscious couple and we're ready to dive deeper, and those are fun couples to work with as well. Did you want to share a little bit about you, Hayley, before we get going?
Yeah, I'm Hayley Henderson, and I'm a stylist. I help women get the best out of their clothes, use it as the tool that they really are, and also there's a lot of deep healing work. So who you are as a person, the figures that have shown up in your life, the resistance you've got, the pain points, the struggles, and the things that you really want. So a lot of us want to feel amazing in our clothes. We want to feel amazing every day. We want to feel amazing in our relationships and show up our best self. And a lot of that starts with the body that you live in and what clothes you put on it and what that feels like that represents for you and your value in this world.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So let's get started talking about this. So what I know that I did, first of all, women tend to be verbal processors. So when a challenge comes up, or even something could just be emotional, it doesn't have to be a problem between the couple. It could be like, I came home from a bad day at work or something like that. I tend to want to talk through it, right? My partner, so someone in their masculine might not want to talk through that. They usually like to figure it out and then do it, like fix it. They don't necessarily want to talk about it. So if your partner's coming home from work and they've had a bad day and they're angry, you sitting there and trying to get them to talk is not helpful. It's going to cause more problems than it is solving problems, because it's not only going to make them feel pressured to talk, feel unseen, misunderstood, those sort of things, because you're not showing up the way that you're not holding space for them the way that they need space held for them. But also, you're going to start feeling like, what we hear women say this all the time: why doesn't he talk to me? Why doesn't he want to talk to me? You start to project this onto him because you have this expectation that he should process the way you do. Mm-hmm. And so you assume that if he's not choosing to process with you verbally, that he maybe doesn't trust you, or he doesn't like you enough to want to talk with you, or he's angry at you, or whatever. You start making up these stories. But the truth is that he's just doing it his own way. And I know that in my experience, so I trained my husband over time to verbally process things, which really pulled him more into his feminine and killed the polarity in our relationship. It was not the only thing, and it wasn't the only reason we got divorced and all that sort of stuff. But I can look back now with the knowledge that I have and see that that was definitely a mistake that I made in that relationship, was expecting that because I had all of these emotions and these feelings, and that was the forefront of how I looked at my life, that he should be too. And if he wasn't, then he was emotionally shut down. Like there was something wrong with him if he wasn't doing it.
Yes, which is what a lot of people talk about, right? They'll say, if he's not responding this way, then it's a red flag, or he's not emotionally available, etc., etc. Do you know what? I can fuck off. Men are not like us, and that's not. We don't want another version of us with a hairy face. We don't want that. We love and appreciate that he's different, that he's all the things that he is, which means he's going to communicate different. He's going to process different. He's going to feel different. Like, those times when you are just, you feel like you could die, your emotions are going to take over, and you really just need something. Harry comes in with these big arms and puts them around you. And if he was you, but with like a beard or a mustache, it's not going to feel amazing, because that rescue isn't going to feel like a cuddle. It's not going to feel like anything. It's going to feel like you were just like, it's okay, buddy. Like, it's not going to be hot. It's not going to feel safe. It's not going to be amazing. And men function different to us. They have different biochemicals. They have a different experience. They have different neurological networks. I don't know the comedian, but I saw a number of years ago a comedian used to hit a stage, and he had two Greek heads, so like one sitting on one pillar and another one sitting on the other side. And he talked about how women's brains are like a super highway. It's like an internet, like everything is all connected, and we think this way, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, walks over to the man's head and he goes, men are very different. Men are like boxes. In their brain, there is a box, and that's that subject, and it is neatly stacked inside the brain, and the boxes do not touch. The information in the subject doesn't touch the other one. So when you go to your partner and you say, you're out on a picnic, and then you're like, you get upset because the mother-in-law did this, and etc., etc., and he's just gonna be like, we're on a picnic. Mom's not here. I don't understand how this is involved. Because in his mind, the subject, like in the box, it's not touching the other boxes. So he's like, Mum's not here. I don't understand what the problem is, because your brain is all connected and touching, and it's super fast in a highway. And he's just like, no, she's not here. I don't understand how this works. And anytime a man, and I tried it because I'm a visual person. I need to sometimes understand how things work. Anytime a man wants to approach a topic, sometimes he needs a bit of warning, and sometimes he'll want time to process it, and he may take time to unpack. And in my mind, he's going into his brain, getting the box of that subject, pulling it out, not touching the sides, not touching the other things, opening the box, looking inside the box, which is that one subject, doing the stuff. And then once that is done, closing the box, putting it back, not touching the other things, and then it's done. And then he's like, bye. And this whole time you're just like, oh my God, what about this thing? And what about this thing? And to him, that's all the boxes touching. And he's like, they can't touch.
That is awesome. That's an amazing analogy.
I wish I could remember the original. It was a comedian, so it was like a little stand-up skit that he did. And every time I am so amazed at how much that has helped me sit in front of a man and realize, he doesn't get it. And that's okay. He's not dumb. He's not stupid. I'm not crazy. I'm not too much. My brain functions different. My biochemicals are different. Like his testosterone, it makes him 30% stronger than me or whatever. That's okay. You can lift the boxes. I'm fine with that. Like realizing, in the previous episode, we talked about interdependence, and realizing we've got different gifts and different strengths. Communication is the same. So sometimes this man may not communicate the way that we expect him to, and that's okay. And it's okay that you made the assumption he communicates your way and that he doesn't. And in this space between you, you get to come up with this new agreement, like, how do we want to communicate? How does this look after me? What looks after me? How do I feel safe? And if you communicate nice and respectfully to a man that wants the best for you, he'll rise to the challenge every single time. He'll say, okay, I can do that, because you've invited him and had the conversation in an adult manner. And if he's come to this relationship with baggage of the past, like we all do, he may have had somebody that attacked him over the way that he did or didn't communicate. And it may be a trigger or a trauma point or a soft spot, and he may not know how to respond because the last 10, 15 years, heck, it could even be 1 month. And it was just enough to push him on the edge where he's like, I just don't like hearing this from women. And that's okay because we respond like that sometimes too. We're not like babies with a clean slate, with no rap sheet, with no experience. We're both coming at this from completely different angles with completely different communication methods and complete different pains and traumas. And the beauty is we get to hold a safe space for each other. We get to communicate in a way that looks after both of us. And we get to build a different relationship in the future. And this is the exciting news. It's not bad. It takes work, but this is the good news. We get to make it up. What do I want?
I think it's interesting that you mentioned the testosterone because you're right. Like biologically, biochemically, we're different. And I watched a TikTok the other day, as I always do. And I'm going to kind of butcher this, but basically the guy was a bodybuilder and he had done some sort of injections to help him with his bodybuilding. But men also have estrogen in them. And
Yeah.
whatever he had done had made his estrogen levels so low that it was negatively impacting him. So he was working with someone to bring that estrogen back up, and he started doing injections of the hormone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he realized like all of these hormonal things, and he was talking about, he was relating it to women's period cycles. And he was saying like, men, seriously, when women get these hormone shifts as they move through this cycle every month, they really do have these moments where it feels like everything's coming at them and their world is ending and they can't see outside of it. Even though if we stand on the outside of it as women, we're smart enough to understand, okay, the cycle goes like this or whatever. But when you're in that hormonal response, this is your world. Your bubble just got really small, you know? And he said, like, stop trying to make it different for them. Just get just get them the meal they want. Just hold them while they're doing it, whatever. Like, basically, I know that sounds a little silly, but basically care for them, right? Like if you have a child that's throwing a tantrum, you care for the child. You know there's a need that's going on and respond to women the same way. But I thought it was so fascinating to hear it from a man's experience and oddly validating. I kind of feel like I shouldn't have needed a man to validate my feminine experience, but you know what I mean? Like it was just someone else experienced this who may never have ever had the opportunity to experience. Most men don't have the opportunity to experience that.
Yeah. Well, it's like we're like the fish in the water. We don't know how to describe the water. So sometimes somebody who's never been in water can tell you all about it. And you're like, but I live here. How come you know more than me? How come you have better words or it sounds different? And it's because they have never experienced it before. So they want to tell you about it. And they have.
That's a good point.
The experience of being on the outside and being on the inside. And they can go, this is what this looks like. So I don't think it's that he validated it. I think it's just he has just different languaging because his whole experience is completely different, which reminds me of a conversation the other day that we forget that we have our cycles and that women are like a monthly thing, whereas men are 24 hours, and men don't know what it's like to be the same thing, like the same feelings or emotion days in a row. They don't understand it. Not always, not hard fast, nothing's hard fast, but it's just a typical default, just wake out of bed, normal person, doesn't know what it's like to feel grumpy for 4 days in a row, because men will wake up like a reset every single day and they don't know what, they just be like, how are you still grumpy? Like, wouldn't you have, figured out how to process it? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that as well, because women will let it fester, whereas men just quietly, whereas men may just go deal with it, because men will often allow themselves the space to process it or deal with it, not always, whereas we won't. We have duties. We're a mom, we've got to go to work, the house has to run itself, like there's X amount of things. Whereas a man, and I think this is interesting, will just fall asleep if he's tired. I can't. Who's going to do it if I don't? You know, there are things that function very different, and men will allow themselves the space that we don't allow ourselves. So we're coming at this from such different perspectives. Like, this is why sex works, because we are not the same. This is why in some same-sex couples, like, people will talk about the polarity and the difference, and if you look at them, it doesn't look like two people that are the same person together. One will often exhibit more masculine and one will often exhibit more feminine.
Yes.
Or both purposefully get dressed the same. I've seen that two people like have fun with it as well. Like, they're just like, let's get dressed the same today and see what it feels like. And they often like to revert back to what they find comfortable. One may be more in their mask, and that works for them. It's not the same. Nothing's hard and fast, but it's just like a typical scale. Often there's that polarity, and they come at it completely different. A woman that I used to work with, she was more in her masculine, and she met a woman who was more in her feminine, and we would have a lot of interesting conversations because the other one was used to dating more feminine, and she's like, it's so weird. She thinks I'm going to respond this way. She's like, has she never dated a mask before? She's like, Hayley, how do I communicate with her? Is this normal? Is this okay? She'd literally come and sit next to me and be like, how?
Yeah, it's so true though.
She's so girly and I don't know what to say to her. And she's like, and I really want it to work. And so, you know, there was 100% this polarity at play. Like, you know, this woman she worked in a masculine industry. She dressed really masculine. Like, she swore like a drunken sailor. Like, she had all those typical markers that you'd be like, think you're the masculine. Like, you wouldn't feel confused. And, you know, this girl that she was dating had the typical markers of being really in her feminine. And so the conversation would often just come back to, you're going to approach this different, babe. Like, you're going to look at this two different angles for the same object, for the same conversation, for the same situation. And it's about accepting that and working with that and working with each other's natural gifts or preferences or expectations, and providing that safety and that unconditional love for this person. No matter, like, if you think about it with your children, like, they could swear and say really horrible things about you. You don't love them any less. That was just a poor choice. And if we stop approaching relationships as though this person is a yes or a no, they're a red flag or a green flag and they've got to go, but more of like a person who is worthy of unconditional love, and it's just a series of agreements, and they may have made a poor choice, or they may not know how to process it, or they're not me, so they're not gonna like back at me.
Yeah. So one of the ways that I have personally chosen to manage this, because like I shared at the very beginning of the episode that I do tend to verbally process things, and I understand now that most men don't prefer that, is I set up the boundary towards the beginning of the relationship, like where it feels appropriate, not too early on. And I just ask, you know, like, I like to verbally process things. Is it okay with you if I process with my best friend and then come back to you when I'm ready? And most guys, I've found anyway, in my own experience, are really happy and okay with that. But I ask it because some guys might not be. You know, some people have the belief that like what happens in the relationship stays in the relationship and nobody else should know about our mess and stuff like that. And honestly, if a guy is like that, he's not the right person for me, because it's not going to work for me. But at least then I know, so that he doesn't feel like I'm talking trash behind his back or whatever. And then I'm also very respectful about my choices of who I pick to talk to. It's not just whoever's available when I start calling down the girlfriend phone tree. It's certainly not my mom or my sister, and not because either of them are bad people, but because they're family. They can't help but freaking take my side no matter what happens. You know what I mean? I need, like, my best friend, and then you as well, are like two people that are super, super good about staying unbiased, but also super good about holding space for me. So I can come and I can be like, he's the worst person and he did this, that, and the other. But if after I process it and I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, but I love him and we're going to work through this, like, you're like, okay, let's keep going at this. Like, I'm not going to hold it against him if you're not holding it against him, sort of thing. And that's been really helpful for me because, as I mentioned, I don't know if it was earlier in this episode or in our last episode when we were talking, I said something about how I tend to be more quiet because I don't want to say things that can't be unheard.
Yeah.
I want to be a little bit more ready for the conversation. So that also gives me space to say whatever I need to or want to unedited.
Yeah.
And it's not like if I accidentally say a cuss word, or if as I'm trying to organize my thoughts, I say it in a way that's really hurtful and not the way I would have wanted to have said it. I have all of this space to work that out, and then I can come back and talk to him. But it's also, it's not about me getting it so organized that I can come back and be in my masculine with him and tell him what to do. I still want to communicate in my feminine when I'm back with him. I'm just allowing myself space to be in that storm of emotions.
Yeah, to have your emotions, but you're also doing it so respectfully. And one thing that I don't think we've ever talked about how good you are with healthy boundaries and how you are good with having this communication without standing on other people. Like, I learned so much from you about having healthy boundaries. Some days I sit and think, what would Sarah do? Like, how would she set this up in a way where, because I will get stuff like jelly, or sometimes I'll get too hard and independent, and like, I want to be available and remember this person is a person and they deserve respect and love and adoration and unconditional love, and they may have made a really poor choice. That's fine. But I forget to do that for myself. And there's boundaries, healthy boundaries that you're really good at helping people set up are really important to learn. It's not about keeping people out. And that's what boundaries sound like they do. Boundaries, healthy boundaries, and especially my perspective is it's nothing to do with the other person normally. It's what I need. And a lot of women forget or have too many of like how it feels for you and these boundaries and why you need them and how to ask for respect. You're so good at.
I think that's an important point, though. A lot of people, when they think about setting boundaries, they're really thinking about how can I control the other person's behavior. They don't realize that, but if they stop and think about it, they're like, I don't like your behavior and I want you to behave differently. That's not what a boundary is. A boundary says, I love myself and this is what I need in order to show myself love, right? So, for example, if you have a friend that is smoking weed, your friend smokes weed, right? And you don't approve of that, you don't like it, whatever your reasoning is behind it. The boundary is you can show up and say, hey, I understand that you like to smoke, but when you smoke, I don't want to be around it. So if you choose to smoke, I'm just going to leave. And that's not like you can't smoke anymore or don't smoke around me or whatever. And you're genuinely setting it up from a place of love. Like, this is your friend and you're not going to judge her for it. You're not going to be resentful or angry about the fact that she's still choosing it because she still gets to choose whatever she wants. You're just saying, I don't like to be around it, so I'm going to step away, right? So then you're loved, she's loved, and that's a healthy boundary. And you can apply those to your relationship too. And I think that when you can learn how to do those things in a romantic relationship, it just makes it so much more loving is the word that just keeps coming to my mind, because instead of the other person feeling like you're critiquing them, controlling them, like almost, I want to say watching over, you know what I mean? Where people feel like they're walking on eggshells because they're like, Jesus, what's the next thing I'm going to do wrong that he or she isn't going to like? You know, it doesn't feel like that anymore because it's just you saying, hey, this is what I need for myself. You're still free to do whatever you want because I still love and respect you as an autonomous human being. That's my soapbox.
But you're really good at helping people
Thank you.
establish boundaries that they may not have known they needed in order to look after themselves, because a lot of the time we do too much and we become depleted and forget these things, and we overstep our boundaries with other people. Like literally that tells us we're overstepping our boundaries by thinking, okay, this man is not communicating how I don't like it. That's overstepping and not just looking at that person in the situation and taking it for what it is. It's like telling them they're wrong. That's not nice. If we don't like it done to ourselves, we shouldn't do it to other people either. And men have been told this a lot. They've been told that they're not good enough, they don't communicate, like so much stuff. So it is hard, it is a weak point. And this is why I think it is so important to invite them in and ask questions or create a safe space where you're not just going to be like, wow, you're horrible, fuck off. You're going to be more like, okay, what does that sound like? What does that look like? What do you need? Here's what I need. And actually having an adult conversation, and you're not hinging your relationship on the conversation. You're not hinging your unconditional feeling for them as a person in general. So not just like as a romantic or intimate partner, just this person as a person. Like when men feel like they're valued just as a person, they'll do anything. They will learn anything. They will go anywhere. And it's because they're finally seen and valued as the person they showed up as. Like, not because they just rolled out of bed and didn't get dressed and they're just like, I'm here. It's actually more just the person that they are. Like, from day one, there's been so much hammered into them. And then when it comes to relationships, they know they're not like us. They are not confused at all. They know we communicate different. And then they also know, like, if they're coming from, sorry, my nose is itchy. I don't know why. Like before when I wanted to cough. They also know that when it comes to like difficult things or troubles and stuff, and they've got pain, they've got trauma, they've been in a relationship before. And if you think, if you have and they have, and you're like 50%, let's just say 50% of all the traumas you've ever had in a relationship, let's just go 50. They're like another 50% because they're the person who was on the other side. They're like, representing the man. You're representing the woman. So when you come into these situations and you've got troubles, so do they. They just often just sit there and they've got their box, it's closed, their arms are closed, their physical posture will tell you what's going on. If they're sitting there like this, like back, shoulders back, not looking, their face is like, all of their face should be looking at you. Even if they've got their arms crossed, that's not always the best indication, but it's just a combination of things. Like if they really don't want to care about your emotions, if they're really like, I don't think so, they're going to look like, are you even sitting in this conversation? It gives me
waiting for the waitress to come back to the table. Like, get me out of here.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna go to the bathroom. You'll be able to tell, and it's hard. It's hard to do this stuff. Like, we're not saying it's easy. This is why we have conversations. This is why people like TikTok and YouTube and Facebook stuff. When we do courses, we have books, because we did not wake up knowing how to do this. And that's okay. And we all, at these points, like mid-30s and older, we've had failed relationships. We've struggled in our own childhood, got failed relationships with parents, grandparents, family, community members, like whoever. The list could be huge. It could be not. You could have had an amazing childhood. You could have amazing friendships. And you could be standing in front of a man and just be like, I just don't understand how I don't get this. And that's because everything's different than when we were younger. Everything is different. And what we're wanting is different too. We want better. And sometimes to have better, it's just like if you wanted to get fit, but you started out not fit, it was hard. And you had to get better, you had to work hard. And relationships are like that. It's an energy exchange, it's an investment. And this is why we essentially want to do like dating stuff, so that we know if we're investing in the right person or not. But if you take it off the table that you're evaluating this person's value in your life, but just look at them as though they're a person, everything changes. And then if it works out between you in a relationship or intimate relationship, oh my God, you'll have the best sex and you're going to have the best communication because you looked at them as a human first, not what they can do for you.
Yeah. And the whole time you were talking, I was thinking about how we keep saying over and over, it's so important not to just be looking for red flags and whatever this other information out there on the internet and in books and stuff is telling you. I do think it's important to learn about the typical red flags and stuff and like have an awareness, but you can't be like sitting there with your checklist of like, okay, once I see 5 red flags, I'm out. But if something comes up and it feels like a red flag for you, you need to be able to communicate with your partner through that. If it continues to happen, you know it's a pattern of behavior and you know that on some level it's a choice. So that's when you get to step in and say, okay, this is really the red flag for me and I need to leave or do whatever it is that you think you need to do. But it's not just, I think so many times I see these different experts out there saying like, if a man isn't this, this, and this, then stop wasting your time with him. There are men out there that will be and get going. And it's like, it's really unfair because it doesn't see them as human, like you were saying. Stop seeing them as something else. Like see them as a human because you're a human and you want to be seen as a human. You're not perfect. And the whole point of relationships is to, look, here goes my soapbox again. I got in my hair. Like ready to go with frustration. But the whole point of being in relationships is to dive deeper into yourself and into your personal development and stuff. So it doesn't matter how perfect this man is. If it's the right relationship for you, there's going to be things that trigger you in there because you need to be taken further and deeper. That's the whole point of it. So here's my soapbox. Let go of the red flags. Okay, so today we, opened up with talking about not expecting men to communicate the way that we communicate and giving them space to communicate how they do. And I don't think we went into a lot of specifics of what men typically communicate like, just more that women tend to be more verbal. But you'll probably know with your partner what they prefer. You can also just ask like, hey, in my example of coming home from work upset, hey, when you come home from work upset, I don't really know how to support you because I know that I would want to sit down on the couch and talk to you and tell you all about it, but you don't seem like you want to share about your day. What can I do when I recognize that you're coming home upset? And also don't make him answer right there. You can ask that question. He might need to go take a shower, do his thing, and come back to you a week later because like you were saying, men do process. They process on their own. And that's why we need to give them that space to, go do the yard work or tinker in the garage or play sports with friends. Like whatever their thing is that they kind of just let their mind run. It's like their form of meditation. And they'll get their answer and you have to trust them to come back to you. So anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been one of my favorite episodes talking to you today about this. This has been so good. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, leave us any questions you have below. If you have any questions about communication, or if you notice that no matter what relationship you're in, a certain pattern keeps coming up, feel free to share that below. And we'd be happy to address it in a future episode with one of our conversations. Until then, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.